My mom told me my family would be happier without me. So I left home that night and rebuilt my life. Years later, the same family that ignored me showed up at my door begging for money after losing everything. Growing up, I learned quickly that my opinions didn't matter. My dreams weren't important. My feelings, they were either ignored or ridiculed. When my sister failed a test, it was my fault for distracting her. When she lost a friend, I was probably the reason. When she broke something, I must have pushed her into it. And my mom, she believed her every single time. That I try to be the perfect daughter. I worked hard, got good grades, kept quiet. When they insulted me, I never lashed out, never fought back. I thought maybe, just maybe if I proved my worth, they'd finally love me like they loved her, but nothing changed. It all came crashing down the night they told me I had ruined their lives. It started with an argument. While they were arguing, I was just standing there letting them yell. My sister had flunked a class, and instead of taking responsibility, she blamed me again. I don't even know how maybe I stressed her out just by existing. "You've ruined our lives!" She screamed that I barely had time to react before my mom echoed, "We'd be happier without you." That was it. The moment that broke me. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't beg for them to take it back, I just nodded. Then I turned around, walked to my room, grabbed a backpack, and packed whatever I could fit. They didn't stop me. They didn't even watch me leave. And just like that, I was gone. I stepped out into the night, the weight of my backpack pressing against my shoulders, but nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. I walked without a destination, just putting distance between me and the house I had never truly called home. It was cold. I remember that vividly. The air bit at my skin, but I didn't shiver. I was numb. I had always thought that leaving would feel dramatic, like in the movies, maybe with tears streaming down my face or a last lingering look at the home I was abandoning. But there was none of that. An A1 ran after me. No one called my name. No one cared that I didn't know where to go. I had no plan, no safety net. My savings were laughable. Just a couple $100s I had secretly stashed away from small tutoring gigs. But I knew one thing for sure, I would never go back. I found a cheap motel for the night, paying for a single room with shaky hands. I stared at the bed but couldn't bring myself to lie down. Instead, I sat at the small desk, the dim yellow light flickering above me, and tried to figure out what to do next. I didn't have a degree, I didn't have connections, I barely had money. But I had one advantage: I had spent my entire life being ignored, underestimated. No one had ever handed me anything. If I was going to make it, I'd have to build something from nothing. I started with what I knew. Studying it sounded ridiculous at the time, but I was good at it. I had spent years excelling in school, tutoring other kids, helping people understand complex subjects. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn that into something. The next day, I walked into a small sea cafe, ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu, and used their free Wi-Fi to apply for every online tutoring gig I could find. I set my rates low, just enough to get people to notice me. At first, it was barely enough to survive. I lived off instant noodles and dollar store groceries. I rented a room in a shared apartment with 3 strangers who barely acknowledged my existence. But it was still better than where I had come from, because every day I woke up knowing that no one would scream at me, and one would blame me for their failures, and one would tell me I was ruining their lives, and that was enough. The months passed, my tutoring gigs grew. 1 client turned into 3. 3 turned into 10. Soon I was making enough to move into a tiny studio apartment, barely more than a box. But it was mine. And yet through all of it, my family never called. Not once. Not on my birthday. Not on holidays. Not even to check if I was alive. It hurt in the way old wounds do. Deep, silent, lingering. But I told myself it was fine. If they didn't care, then neither did I. A year into my new life, things changed, and I had built up a reputation as a tutor specializing in college entrance exams. I had students from all over the country reaching out to me, desperate for help, but I was still trading time for money, and I knew that wasn't sustainable. That's when I got an idea. What if I turned my lessons into something big, bigger, something scalable? I spent months studying digital marketing, watching hours of free YouTube content, reading every article I could find. Then I started creating my own online course, the Ultimate SAT Prep Guide. It was a risk. I poured every spare dollar I had into designing the course, building a website, running ads. At first, sales trickled in, 1 here, 2 there. Then something shifted. Word of mouth spread. Students started raving about my methods, sharing them online, and then almost overnight, it exploded. I woke up one morning to see that my sales had tripled, then quadrupled. Within a few months, I was making more than I had ever thought possible. I moved into a sleek high-rise apartment, the kind I used to dream about. I traveled, met people who actually respected me, built friendships that weren't based on obligation or blood. I had done it. I had built myself from nothing, and my family, they were nowhere to be found. Not a single message, not a single call. They didn't care about me until this morning when my phone buzzed. I barely glanced at it, but then I saw the notifications. Mom 6 missed calls, sister 8 missed calls. I stared at the screen, heart pounding after all this time after they had made it so clear they never wanted me. I let out a slow breath. I had changed. I wasn't the weak, desperate girl they had pushed out of their lives. I wasn't their punching bag anymore. Whatever they wanted, it wasn't going to be an apology, and I had no intention of making it easy for them. I sat there staring at the screen for what felt like hours, but in reality, it was only a few minutes. My mind raced. What could they possibly want after all this time? Mom had never once apologized for how she treated me. She had never admitted how she constantly chose my sister over me, and my sister. She hadn't even cared to notice I was gone until now. But now, after everything they wanted me, I finally decided to pick up. It was almost surreal hearing her voice after so long. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Sweetie, please, we need to talk." Mom's voice trembled. "Sweetie?" After everything, she hadn't called me that in years. The fake tenderness stung. "What's going on?" I asked, not hiding my disbelief. There was a long pause. "We've fallen on hard times," Mom continued, her voice cracking. "Your sister, she's been having trouble at school again, and with everything going on, we just don't have enough. We need your help." I bit my lip, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and rage bubbling up inside me. This is why they were calling me now. "What kind of help?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. "We need money," she blurted out. "Your sister's tuition, it's due, and we have bills we can't pay. I know we've never been there for you, but please, we're struggling. We need you to help us. We know it's a lot to ask, but please, we've tried everything." I could hear her sniffle. Maybe it was genuine, or maybe it was just guilt trying to worm its way back in. "Please," she repeated, "we need you back. We need your support." The words hung in the air. My support, the same support they had rejected for years. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to control the rush of emotions threatening to choke me. How could they think this was okay? It was the first time in a long time that I felt something other than indifference. It was laughable. "You're serious," I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You really think I'll come back and help you after everything?" There was a pause followed by my mom's desperate voice. "Please don't do this. We know we messed up, but we're your family. You can't just leave us like this. You never cared about me when I needed you." I shot back, my voice trembling with suppressed anger. "You were too busy with your golden child. You let me disappear. You told me you'd be better off without me." I paused, feeling the rage bubble up in my chest, but I held it in check. I wasn't going to let them see how much they had hurt me. I wasn't going to let them twist this back on me. "I don't you anything," I said, every word sharp as glass. Another long pause done him why. Sister's voice came through next, sounding frantic and panicked. I know I was horrible to you, but I need your help. I messed up. Okay, I didn't mean it. I've been trying to fix things, but I don't know what to do anymore." I almost laughed. "Fix things? How did you fix years of pain?" "I don't want your apologies," I said coldly, "and I don't owe you my money or my help. You can figure it out just like I did. But please, just..." My sister's voice wavered, but I cut her off. "No, you should have thought about this before you kicked me out of your lives." I could feel my heart racing as I hung up the phone, but the adrenaline wasn't just from anger, it was from the satisfaction. The satisfaction of knowing that they needed me after years of silence, of pretending I didn't exist. They needed me. I stood up, pacing the room, letting the reality of the situation sink in. They weren't calling to apologize. They weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because they needed me to fix their mess. And now that they were struggling, they realized what they had thrown away. But it didn't matter to me. They didn't deserve me anymore, that I was done. But deep down, a part of me wanted to make them beg a little longer, make them squirm. The phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen. It was Mom again, the same pleading tone in her message. "Please, I know we can't undo the past, but we need you." I grinned. They had no idea what they were getting themselves into. The phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with a new message from my mom. "Please, I'm begging you. We don't know where else to turn." I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore it entirely after all. Hadn't I already given them my answer? But there was something about that desperation in her tone that made me hesitate for a moment. I shook my head no, I wasn't going to soften. I wasn't going to be the one to make their lives better again. The thing is, I had built something for myself, my empire, so to speak. My success wasn't just about the money, it was about the power to decide who got to be a part of my life, and my family didn't deserve that privilege anymore. I set the phone down, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. From this vantage point, everything felt so distant, so small. The struggles of my old life felt like they belonged to someone else. I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't their burden yet. The messages kept coming. I took a breath. I wasn't going to give in. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me with their guilt. And yet, deep down, there was a flicker of something. Maybe it was pity, maybe curiosity, maybe something darker, but I resisted. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Again, a quick glance at the screen told me it was from my sister this time. I hesitated. Should I even bother reading this? But my thumb swiped across the screen before I could think about it too long. The message came in. I know I can't change the past, but I've been trying so hard to get into college, they rejected me. And now Mom's saying that if we don't get the money for the retake, I'll never make it. Please, please, I'm so sorry. I felt a pang of something unfamiliar. Not sympathy, not guilt, but something that made me pause. Was this genuine? Was this really my sister begging me? Or was she just playing her part? I took a deep breath, my hands shaking as I typed my response. You never cared when I needed you. Why should I care now? I hit SN, and the weight that settled in my chest felt heavier than I expected. There was a part of me that felt cold, detached, a protective armor I had built over the years, but another part of me, it wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. As the day went on, I continued working, but every time I glanced at my phone, there were more notifications, calls, texts, voicemails. They were relentless. I could feel their desperation creeping through the screen. Through the words, they were starting to crumble under the weight of their own choices. But what did they expect from me? They had made their bed. They had chosen their path. Now it was time for them to face the consequences. But then, at 7:00 p.m., I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. A message from Mom. I need to talk to you. This isn't just about money. I know I messed up, we messed up, but I'm asking you as a mother to come home. I need you. We need you. Please don't leave us like this. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard for a second. I actually considered calling her back. Maybe I could hear her out. Maybe I could find some way to make this work. But then I thought of everything they had put me through, the way they had treated me, like I didn't matter. I wasn't just going to forget that I wasn't their savior. With a deep exhale, I typed, "You had your chance. I'm done." I hit send, and something inside me cracked, that I knew I had made the right choice. But at the same time, there was a lingering ache in my chest, because deep down I couldn't help but wonder, what if this was their last cry for help? What if they really were suffering? But in the end, I had learned one thing: I couldn't fix them. They were beyond saving. And if they wanted anything from me, it had to be on my terms. I set my phone down and tried to forget about them, but the next evening, as I was sitting in my living room scrolling through my phone, I heard a knock at the door, a sharp, quick rap followed by a pause. I looked up a little confused. Who could that be? I stood up and walked over to the door, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Something didn't feel right. Peering through the peephole, my stomach dropped there. They were Mom, Dad, and my sister standing on my doorstep looking like they hadn't slept in days. Their faces were tired, drawn, and pale, but it wasn't just their appearance that made my pulse quicken. It was the fact that they had shown up here uninvited. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore them, to turn around and walk away, pretending I hadn't seen them, but the rage I had been bottling up came surging forward. I wasn't about to let them invade my space after everything they'd done. I opened the door just enough to see them fully. My heart was hammering in my chest. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice low but shaking with anger. Mom stepped forward first, her eyes wide with desperation. "Please, please, just hear us out," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I stared at her, the same woman who had told me she'd be better off without me, who had shoved me aside time and time again, and now she was standing on my doorstep asking for help. "What the heck are you doing here?" I repeated, my tone rising. "You think just because you show up at my door I'm going to take you back? You think I'm going to forget everything you've done?" Dad shifted uncomfortably behind Mom, but he didn't speak. My sister stood next to him, her eyes on the ground, avoiding my gaze. We're sorry," Mom said, her voice breaking. "We've been trying to reach you, but we know we've messed up. It's just so hard and we don't know what else to do. You're the only one who can help us. The only one who can help you." I felt the anger rise up like a tidal wave. "You didn't need me before. Why now you had years to fix this? I snapped. Years, and you never once bothered to reach out to make things right, not when it mattered. And now you think you can just show up here and make everything okay. They were silent for a moment, clearly taken aback by my coldness. Mom's eyes welled with tears, but I couldn't bring myself to care. We've been struggling, she continued, her voice a desperate whisper. We don't have money for rent. Your sister's future is slipping away. I don't know what else to do. Don't tell me you don't know what else to do, I said, my voice shaking with fury. Now you had choices, you made choices, and I wasn't part of them. But now that everything's falling apart, suddenly you want me. Mom took a step forward, her hand outstretched. Please just listen. I slammed the door in her face, the sound of it reverberating through the house. The noise echoed in my ears, and for a second I felt a rush of power. I could finally control this situation. But as I stood there, my hand resting on the door handle, something nodded at me. Something. Twisted in my go-to, it wasn't guilt. It was something worse. It was the realization that they had come here to me because they had nowhere else to turn, and they had shown up not because they wanted to fix our relationship, not because they were truly sorry, but because they needed me and I hated it. They didn't deserve me, but the anger wasn't the only thing I felt. There was a part of me that wanted to hurt them, to let them see just how badly they had messed up, to make them feel the weight of their own actions, and the fact that they thought they could just show up on my doorstep, it made me angrier than anything else. I walked away from the door, leaving them standing on the other side, but they didn't leave. I could hear them talking outside. Mom was pleading. My sister was crying. Dad was trying to comfort them. I couldn't stand it anymore. The anger inside me was overwhelming, and I knew that if I didn't do something, I would regret it. So I opened the door again. There they were, standing there, still waiting. The desperation was written all over their faces. Mom's eyes were red from crying. My sister's head hung low in shame. And Dad? He looked defeated, like a man who had lost everything and didn't know how to get it back. For a moment, I just stood there, taking in the sight of them, the family that had hurt me, the family that had made me feel worthless, invisible, and now they were here asking for help. But what did I owe them? Nothing. That I took a deep breath, and then without a word, I looked at them one last time. No, you don't get to come here and expect forgiveness just because you're struggling now. The words came out cold hard, like a knife slicing through the tension. I didn't feel an ounce of regret as I said them. They deserved to hear the truth. You had years to fix this. I continued, my voice steady but firm. Years to realize what you lost, but you didn't care then, and I'm not going to be your solution now. I saw Mom open her mouth to protest, but I held up my hand, silencing her. I've built my life, my success from the ground up, and I'm not going to let you destroy it too. You don't get to come into my life and expect everything to magically change because you've hit rock bottom. Their eyes started to well up again, but I couldn't feel anything. No guilt, no remorse, just a quiet satisfaction, no knowing I was finally putting myself first. Go, I said simply, my voice unwavering. Fix your own mess, I'm done with that. I closed the door for the last time. Weeks passed, and I kept living my life. My business grew, my network expanded, and I felt more alive than ever. I had become the person I'd always wanted to be, the person who didn't have to apologize for their success, the person who had learned to let go of the toxic parts of their past. I never heard from them again, not even a message, not even a call. And you know what? That was fine. It was a quiet peace I hadn't realized I'd been craving. And as time went on, I came to understand something important. The people who hurt you, the people who abandoned you, are not the ones you should be looking to for validation. You're the one who matters. You're the one who gets to decide your future. And in the end, I had learned one very simple truth. You can't keep giving to people who never gave you anything back. The door closed for good.